Hello world and welcome to Podcast in A Minor. We have a new intro. I write weird little songs and then I talk about them, like how I wrote them or like whatever I want to talk about related to that. The podcast app I've been using has taken away all my files, so we'll improvise. And now for today's opening song. I heard a song so real, like the moaning of a goat whose essence drained away through little wounds in her throat. Oh, I wish that you could hear me. I dread the last thing you'll ever see. El Chupacabra, vampiric wolf and beast of night, oh, watching your sheep, he's sucking your livestock dry. How will you sleep tonight? A little punch of rum and guava, chasing off the nightmares of what might be out there. Can you hear the oblivious goats in the night bleating their carols? Find me, dear light, needless though I warn of tragedy. Oh, if only you could hear me. El Chupacabra, glowing red-eyed fangs and bald vampire lizard, sucking your livestock dry. He's sucking your livestock dry. He's sucking your livestock dry. Hello world and welcome to Podcast in A Minor. I'm Amy Zollers McAnally, a poet and an artist, and I'm in one of my moods. And you just heard El Chupacabra on the Taylor Gemini Mini acoustic guitar. It's another Cryptid Campfire, a summer tradition here on Podcast in A Minor. And this time we have Dueling Chupacabras, as the title states, dueling. We'll get to that a little later. First, a description of the Mexican goat sucker, as they called it on the X-Files, I believe. And to set the mood, I will read part of the back of the packaging of the Chupacabra dice game, a Steve Jackson game, which if I remember, I will talk about in a moment. Night falls, and the blood-sucking Chupacabra stalks its prey. Its red eyes mean doom. Now, next, a very good, succinct description of the Chupacabra from the Wiki fandom site for Destination Truth, that Josh Gates show from way back. Resembling a massive bipedal vampire bat with black hair, long sharp teeth, and glowing red eyes, El Chupacabra is notorious for attacking livestock and sometimes people, reportedly draining its victim's blood through a single puncture wound. This accounts for the irreverent English translation of its name, the goat sucker. The first known sightings of this beast occurred in Puerto Rico during the 1970s, with subsequent eyewitness accounts in the mid-1990s causing scares in Florida and Mexico. Soon afterward, public alarm over El Chupacabra spread to Brazil, Argentina, and Chile. Armed searches for El Chupacabra have been made in recent years in Argentina and Chile as a reaction to more than 200 unexplained animal mutilations. So far, no conclusive findings have been reported. Pause. Back. I would like to read a few words from Mysterious Creatures, A Guide to Cryptozoology by George M. Eberhardt under the entry of the Chupacabra, and I intend to read it in my best campfire voice, as this is Cryptid Campfire. Behavior: nocturnal, moves awkwardly with arms outstretched or by hopping, said to be able to jump over trees, kills goats, chickens, sheep, and other farm animals, and drinks their blood. Animal victims generally have 2 or 3 circular puncture wounds about 0.25 to 0.5 inches in diameter on the neck or lower jaw. Often, one of the wounds punctures the cerebellum, part of the brain. In some cases, organs are said to have been removed. Tracks: leaves a trail of slime and rancid meat. Tracks vary Some near Miami were 5 inches long by 4.5 inches wide. Significant sightings in Moca, Puerto Rico in March 1975. Something was killing cows, goats, pigs, and geese and draining all their blood. Deep stab or puncture wounds were found on the carcasses, causing the perpetrator to be christened the Moca Vampire. Killer snakes and birds were blamed, and the Puerto Rico Agricultural Commission called on the police for a full investigation. On March 25th, Juan Muñiz became the first human to be attacked by what he described as a, quote, horrible creature covered in feathers, forcing him to hide behind some bushes. In April, other towns on the island reported animal killings and attacks by a weird bird or dog-like animal or unidentified flying object, UFO, aliens, but reports died out after a few more weeks. On March 9th, 1996, Ovidio Mendez of Aguas Buenas, Puerto Rico, was burying a dead and mutilated chicken when he saw a creature 4 feet tall and walking on 2 legs. It had large fangs, red eyes, pointed ears, and claw-like hands. There is more. There is an extensive entry of the Chupacabra with illustration in George M. Eberhardt's Mysterious Creatures, A Guide to Cryptozoology, Volume 1. So, I love a physical reference book. I love it. I've worked in 4 libraries, and I'm kind of a reference freak. And that, I mean, it doesn't get much better than Mysterious Creatures, Volume 1, Volume 2. Good stuff. Okay. Now, my next road of research was episode 3 of The Unexplained with William Shatner. That's letter X, planed, with William Shatner, and the title of the episode was Strange Creatures. In the Chupacabra segment, we meet a woman with a chicken ranch in Texas who was astonished to find one of her chickens drained of blood in the yard on odd mornings. It happened more than once. She had heard of the Chupacabra, and one day a neighbor told her she had seen the strangest creature dead in the road, hit by a vehicle, and the rancher went right out to have a look at it. In fact, she brought it home, examined it, and had it taxidermied. Her Chupacabra was wolf-like, with fangs and a gray hide. It was mounted with eerie, dark blue glass eyes and its toothy mouth wide open. The woman actually collected some DNA material and sent it off to be analyzed. The results came back as a cross between a coyote and a Mexican wolf. One scientist was baffled by this, saying those two things weren't known to mate, but she supposed it might be possible. The great thing about The Unexplained is they're not looking to debunk anything. They play up the mystery, but good. Big time. And that is what I'm after when I watch a show like that. Thank you, The Unexplained with William Shatner. Next up was The X-Files Season 4, Episode 11, El Mundo Gira. And the translation I found was The World Turns, the World Just Spins. It centers on Mexican migrant workers in California. As several of them leave for work one morning, a man is flirting with his brother's girlfriend as his brother looks on from the work truck, livid, rolling away. An older woman calls to the young lady to hurry and gather up the goats before they wander off. And so the young lady disappears over the hill toward the goats, and her boyfriend's flirty brother tags along. Suddenly, in a huge flash of light and a blast of thunder, yellow rain begins to fall. The goats return, but the man and woman do not. So the older woman runs up the hill calling to her daughter. They find the young lady lying on the ground dead, her eyes and lips already decaying away. Everyone freaks out, certain that El Chupacabra did it. Agents Mulder and Scully come along. Scully, of course, rejects any folkloric, non-scientific explanation, and Mulder seems wide open to anything that would be a true cause of the weird rain and unsettling death, all while more strange deaths are happening, and Chupacabra hysteria gets rampant. The corpses seem to mummify under thick shrouds of something like fuzzy green mold almost instantaneously, and people begin to believe that the flirtatious brother is El Chupacabra. Mulder and Scully are convinced that the deaths do occur wherever Eladio goes. Eladio is the brother in the opening scene, and they go looking for him. Meanwhile, his brother Soledad, grieving over his girlfriend, is looking for Eladio too, so he can kill him for revenge. In the end, Soledad cannot bring himself to kill his brother, and both of them, he and Eladio, are infected with whatever enzyme Eladio's been carrying around that spreads fungus all over people. The two brothers look like true monsters as they flee back to Mexico on foot. Their heads are enlarged and they've gone kind of gray, kind of like the gray hide of the Texas chupacabra that is now taxidermied on a ranch somewhere. So there were no cryptid chupacabras in the episode of The X-Files, except for, they mentioned the folk tales the migrant workers were telling one another. I'm fascinated that these workers were able and willing to say, okay, El Chupacabra is Eladio. And that was that. That is folklore, adaptable, changing, with every teller of the story. Made sense to them. After we watched The X-Files together, my husband looked up Expedition Unknown with Josh Gates to see what the crew could tell us about El Chupacabra. In Season 7, Episode 7, the Expedition Unknown gang traveled to Puerto Rico to search caves and mountain forests for the cryptid. So that gives us chupacabra lore from Texas, Mexico, and Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico has had several reports of strange animal sightings and disturbing farm animal deaths, as mentioned in Eberhard's Mysterious Creatures book. Josh Gates and company set up infrared cameras in locations where people had reported sightings, and they trekked up a mountain to a cave where a man claimed to have seen El Chupacabra. They entered the cave, which contained absolute waves of live cockroaches and weird spidery scorpions. Josh Gates himself wiggled into a terrifying little opening where the witness had gone and seen whatever he saw. And Gates went much farther in than anyone was comfortable with him doing, but he saw nothing save some tantalizing scratches on a cave wall. The night cameras captured heat signatures of animals, some of which were obviously cows and goats, while other shapes were more mysterious. But there was a magnificent shot on one of the cameras of some indistinct creature right on top of the camera lens, just way too close to recognize what it was, except that when it walked away, the long curved spikes or spiky hairs that adorn the chupacabra's back in a witness sketches were exactly what we seem to be looking at. So I love that. Expedition Unknown was simultaneously the most rewarding and least rewarding television research we did. I include my husband because announcement when he kindly released my new Cryptid Campfire album containing 2 summers worth of cryptid tunes from Podcast in A minor, released on Bandcamp now. He spread the word, and a friend of his lamented that there was no Chupacabra song. I was grateful for this input because I knew I didn't want to mess up my Cryptid Campfire streak, and I aim to release at least 1 episode with a cryptid song this summer to give 3 summers in a row of Cryptid Campfire. But I couldn't settle on a creature to sing about. I'd forgotten El Chupacabra. So when I settled in to write that song, my husband, Sean McAnally, prolific songwriter and game writer and rocker, became bombarded with Chupacabra song ideas of his own. He wrote and recorded his own version of El Chupacabra, which I am going to play right now.
Chupacabra.
I mean, like, wow, right? Did you get that part about the yellow rain? Right on, man. And that's why it's Dueling Chupacabras. 2 songs for you sweet cookies. But as I was saying, Expedition Unknown's least rewarding status comes from the scientist who just poo-pooed the remotest possibility of El Chupacabra being anything but ridiculous superstition. Coyote with mange, barn owl, etc. All he did was take a dog skull and insist that the fang marks match the injury on 1 chicken, maybe 2, that had recently been discovered dead. And he sniffed that the animal wasn't exsanguinated at all, just had a broken neck. Okay, fine. He said it was a dog, but what kind of a sample size is 2 chickens? Like Forrest Burgess often says on the podcast Astonishing Legends, if 100 people say they've seen something strange, even if only one of them is telling the truth, something strange could be out there. And that's paraphrase. On the other hand, Expedition Unknown's hunt for the Chupacabra episode was gleefully rewarding because Josh Gates clues us into a cocktail called Chupacabra Punch, which shows up in my song, Chases Off the Nightmare, which is just a theory. Chupacabra Punch contains rum, coconut, pineapple, guava juice, splash of lime juice. I do not know the proportions. I do not know whether that's coconut water or coconut milk or coconut flesh, but I will point out that the Puerto Rican bartenders seem to use a pretty big shot of rum. I'm going to go with 2 ounces. But play around with it, see what you like, drink responsibly. I do love a recipe. And so that was swell, Josh Gates. Thank you. Destination Truth was another Josh Gates show that I remember watching years ago, so we looked into that one too. Who could forget the dramatic reveal of El Chupacabra shrieking in a cat carrier that turned out to be a mean little ferret? How's that little fella gonna take down a goat? I don't know. And finally, why is nobody talking about the adorable little baby Chupacabra, presumably, caught by a couple in Ratcliffe, Texas like 10 years ago? Link in show notes. That thing is a darling baby with a ferocious little growl. Aw. But nobody could really pin down what he was. Some kind of canine, said the experts. Nobody knew. And, let's take a little look at the Chupacabra dice, because I showed you the packaging. Steve Jackson, if you can see this, if I decide to put it on YouTube because of the way I have to record now, little dice where you roll a handful, you might get the red Chupacabra ice. These dice glow in the dark, by the way. Or you might get a goat, or you might get a chicken, or 2 chickens, or a cow. And if you get enough Chupacabras, you can take your opponent's cows and chickens and things, and the person who runs out of dice first loses. But it's fun. Short game, quick, easy, creepy if you get into it, which I do. Glow in the dark. I haven't played it in the dark yet. I've only played it in the light, but it's fun. So, boom, another Cryptid Campfire in the can. Enjoy the dwindling days of summer, my friends. And do consider bringing your goats inside at night if you're in the Chupacabra zone. Good luck with that. Thank you for listening. See you next time. My star, the Encyclopedia Neurotica. It's my role in the play.